everyone, welcome back to Pominos. Hope we're all doing really well this fine Saturday morning. Obviously, it's always good to start off with a win. If you are new around here, please smash that like button, please smash that subscribe button. We're absolutely smashing them out. We just hit 2,400, which I'm deeply, deeply humbled. You guys and girls are absolute legends and really give me a G up every week. You can go a step further, become a member of the channel. Loads of you have done that. Link is in the description. We sponsor Shanghai, Domaku. We get some inside looks at the sponsors events and stuff that I like to share with you all. And if you want to do that, link is in the description, like I say. And welcome back to the review Fans Corner, brought to you by the quackingcauldron.com.au. So go check that out there. That is Mrs. Pom's business that sponsors this segment. And let's talk about it. We got the win on their 150th anniversary. And it won't win any stylistic points, will it? But I think from a holistic point of view, there was a lot to take out of that game that I don't think is enough talked about. I want to pick on Voss's press conference. He made a comment there which I thought was really important when he was talked about the berating the players in the third quarter. And it was about playing their way, trusting their brand, and finding a way to win was another part of that press conference, that they're learning to win and they're learning to win the right way. And this was a real grind, this was. And there was something that I was chatting to a good Essendon friend of mine and he was fuming. He actually mentioned to me he doesn't mind Bolton, which is a meme in itself, isn't it? But he said that Rotten has a habit of throwing men behind the ball. Now, it's interesting, the fourth quarter, on average, they had 15 players behind the arc in the fourth quarter. They really killed that game off. And Carlton were superb at coming up with a new way. 0 points scored from centre clearances, which is our predominant area. It's the area that we're number one for in the comp. Carlton, 53 points from intercept chains, 34 from defensive half. The number one side in the last few weeks from differential from transition scores. And they managed to even up the clearances. And what Essendon really did is they came to stifle and bore the game out. Their centre clearance will cover that a lot more in depth in your questions because there was a lot of questions about it. But this was a real slugfest for Carlton. And Essendon did well in that avenue. They really took the centre away from Carlton. They tried to be very arborous. We knew they'd attack down the wing. It was very slow. It was very measured. They took all the pace off the ball and they tried to make Carlton work. And really, this is the only game this season where Carlton haven't been threatened at all. There wasn't a point from start to finish. I think if we're honest with ourselves, and I've watched it back again out of the heat at the moment, where Carlton will ever really look like they were going to lose that game. It was a weird affair. It was a weird affair, and if I was an Essendon fan, I'd be very disappointed on our 150th anniversary. They really didn't give it a go. Now, the big story for me was Caleb Marchbank coming back, and he just slided back into that side, didn't he? He looked like he'd been there way off, and we're going to cover him a bit more in depth. But that was a huge positive for Carlton, that they really looked okay down the back. They didn't look really troubled down the back. I thought this is a really tough game because we covered it in the scout report. If you actually look at how they move the ball inside 50, they have a system which is really target right and they work off him. And Lewis Young, Marchbank and Plowman, they really alleviated that very wisely in a competition that was really hard because the midfield didn't really have it their own way. So they really had to step up. And the fact that Stringer, who many people said was going to cause us problems, was kind of anonymous because of Plough. Real credit to him. And Whittaker will probably have a smile on his face that his little protege, Lewis Young, really stepped up in his absence and was absolutely sensational. Was another level. Doc, sensational. Saad, sensational. Newman, sensational. They really did it. Even Boyd, he might not be flashy, and we're going to cover his numbers a bit later, but really did what a back pocket has to do. So, all in all, it was a measured. I would say it was measured. And I agree with Voss. Way too much is looked at on percentage. And it's weird that throughout the years, we don't really hear about percentage till the last 2 weeks. the end of the day, Carlton are getting the job done, and another 3 quarters won. Epic work against a side that really went 2018 Carlton and threw men behind the ball and tried to keep it in very slippery conditions. I was speaking to a good friend of mine who had the privilege of being down on the ground, said that it was an absolute shitstorm in the second half, which I think is a really interesting facet there. But all in all, before we get on to your questions, I enjoyed it. I thought Carlton really did the right thing. I thought Cripps was sensational, just quietly. I thought his ability to impact the game and really pressure. And I think as well with what the midfield might have not got the centre clearance dominance, they managed to win the clearances all in all. They really focused on that stoppage area, which had to be done in them conditions. And there was a few tactical changes that we haven't seen from Carlton, which was really a Voss masterclass. So that being said, I'm really happy we move on to Richmond now. Bit of work to do. But again, these boys are finding a way to win. And that, for me, makes them a very deadly side. So let's see what you guys and girls had me find out about this week. I'm very excited about this. Looks like Lewis Young says, Saras boy, match up for 2 metre Peter. Can we get some Lewis Young love? Well, we just had some, but we'll have some more. Christian, good day to you, mate. Good friend of the channel. Lewis Young's best game for the club. And AM, Young was best on ground. Agree? You'll see my best on ground a bit later, but these are very good comments. So let's have a look at Lewis Young's game. And it was absolutely epic from Lewis Young, let's be honest. 18 touches, 14 intercept posies, and 5 intercept marks. 10 spoils. Now, this is really interesting. I want you to, as you look at his heat map, look where he was. It's very Jacob Whittaker. It was. He really was baby Whittaker this week. But the spoils is really important because he only won one of his one-on-one contests, right? Now, people may look at that, and this is what really annoys me about the AFL. People look at stats, but they don't tell you the story. So if you're not winning one-on-one percentage, you might not do it against someone like Peter Wright. You've got to spoil. He spoiled the most on the ground. And what is interesting as well, that he had 6 ground ball gets as well. So he got his own spoils, which is really important because he played to his strengths, not Wright's strengths. A really underrated part of Lewis Young's game. Now, that is also, if you add his 100% disposal efficiency, that is an absolute phenomenal game from him. Lewis Young was in another level of good this week, and I am super excited about where he can go and his ceiling. I think you've seen something today that he had to step up in the absence, right? And we saw Whittaker step up in the absence of Jones a lot of times in his formative years. It only helps them out. He really marshalled that backline really well, and it was an absolute epic game. So great questions, guys. He wasn't my best on ground, though. There is someone else, but he was second best on ground for me. I was maybe harsh, but I am a little bit biased. So let's look what else came through. And we got Jared Reed. Love Young and Newman's game. Walsh is a freak. We missed some sitters, but we're also a bit smart-ass in the last quarter, but we banked the points and move on. Great start to the weekend. I think Carlton definitely took the foot off the pedal. I think Voss summed it up. The game had run its course. And you got to remember, Port were heralded at half-time when they beat us, when Hinckley said, the game was over and we just iced it. But they were heralded as messiahs, and Port fans loved it. I love Voss saying that. I'm not really bothered about the fourth quarter. It was very negative football from them, which kind of played into the game. I think the Cherrett injury has got to do it. And honestly, there is no value in battering sides. And I agree with Voss. It will come eventually. But name a side in the comp of the last 10 years that puts sides away by 70 every week. They don't do it. It doesn't happen. It's impractical. It might be good for fans, but it's not good in reality. And if I was a coach, I wouldn't want to expel energy pointlessly. Do you know what I mean? Just to impress people. The old Jose Mourinho. Do you want to win a league 38 times 1-0, or do you want to finish 4th and we batter aside 7-1? Do you know what I mean? It's not an entertainment business, it's a winning business, is my theory on that. But I agree with everything, Jared, you say, mate. Mary Sears, good win, it was, wasn't it? She put some kisses in there. I believe you're Max's Nana, so much love to you. Very good friend of the channel, Max, so thank you very much for your comment. And great comments, guys and girls. Let's see what else we've got. Legit questions, asked James Cass. It's always a legit question from you, though, mate. Voss, the coach of the year. For me, he's on top. But only just from Longmuir. Do you mean the Freo, Longmire, or... Well, I mean, Sydney have done well as well. I'd say he's miles ahead, and I'll say why. He's taken a side that was ranked bottom 3 for 90% of AFL stats that show that you're a good side. He's now ranked in the top 5 for all of them. Easily the best. Like, what he has done with heavy injuries, probably more so than the Teague years as well, to more key personnel as well. More key personnel is remarkable. Odds on, if we get into the finals and he doesn't win it, it's going to be a bigger shock than when Whittaker didn't make a AA. That's how big it is. There is no shadow of a doubt that Carlton not only have nailed the appointment, but they have also got a guy. And just seeing that third quarter and him spray them when they're winning, that would have never have happened in standards. David Teague and Bolton used to get excited when Carlton won ugly. The fact that Vossi has demanded the standards, and it was something that was said to me a lot, that the focus is destroying a team, but it was destroying a team with a 4-quarter playing our way. It was reiterated, and Voss did it again. That is very exciting. If you play that brand, they have to trust the brand. Spot on, mate, James. I'm with you, buddy. Linny Hayes, Nuggy? Sorry if I've massacred that, my friend. How does Newnes and Boyd get a game over Stocker? Stocker takes a few weeks to get going, and I thought it should have been in the side tonight. He's clearly our best 22. Well, I was one of the few that dropped him, right? And I'll tell you for why. I like the fact that we dropped him, even though people are going to go on about he went at 75%, kicking efficiency and stuff. Go back and watch them 75%. I counted 4 of them possessions last week that actually run him into trouble. So when you look at disposal efficiency from the back pocket, you've got to remember he plays 92% back pocket of game time. That is important because there you are looking for 3 facets, right? You're looking for 3 facets from them. And most of them are pressure act based. Now he averages just under 3 pressure acts. He's very deceptive because he's physical around the ground. You're looking for high spoils or you're looking for high defensive clearance charts. And he doesn't act in there. Now, the way that Voss likes to play them is it's definitely a pressure clean-up role. Now, I think Stocker's very acquitted to that. But I felt that the big thing with Stocker is he's got to take the game on. And that's something that he hasn't done the last couple of weeks. And that's something that I think it's good for him to go back in the VFL and just refine them skills. There is things there that I do think he is in the best 22. But why play him there just because he's going to be good? Get him good. And all players have gone through that. All players at top clubs have gone through in their formative years. You've got to remember with Stocker, he's never had that. Carlton have never played him, VFL'd him, and then played him again. There's never been a shortcut unless you're a coach's favourite at the club. So I didn't mind the standard that sets, particularly on a loss. Give some of these young kids a break and do it and see what it is. Now, let's just look at Boydie, right? So 6 touches, but I want you to look at something really important of where he played. Now, he also gave the dimension to play him on the wing. Now, he played about 72 back pocket, 30% up top. The Carlton heavily rotated with Newnes. That is something that Vossi likes to do, and particularly in a game like this, that was really important. Now, them stats aren't exciting. However, for a back pocket, they are pretty standard of what I'd expect to see in the AFL. I'd expect to see one of them stats in the good elite category, and the pressure axe comes into it for a back pocket. Now, remember when you go and do this, if you look on the AFL app, people always make this mistake and they get excited. Look at what categorization the AFL is saying to you. When you look at Champs Data, it's a lot easier. You can actually change that. It's what they show you though. But that is rated as it's borderline elite for a pressure for a pocket defender. So Jordan Boyd, he did well. It wasn't. I'm not saying it was the greatest game of all time from Jordan Boyd. However, that rotation wouldn't have existed with Liam Stocker. And before anyone says midfielder, he hasn't played midfield since he was a junior. You can't just throw him in an AFL. That is football suicide. So I would like to see, to answer your question, a bit of midfield time for Stocker. I think we need to add that rotation to really get the best out of him. But that's up to Vossi, and that's probably a pre-season job. But Stocker will be back. Don't worry. Stocker will be back in the next couple of weeks. He's going to tear it up in the VFL, and we'll see Stotts back because he's a very, very good player. He is a very good player, and he is someone as well that does just need to refine a little bit. I have noticed he's very tentative in AFL compared to VFL, and that's something to look out for today in the VFL. Next question. Can we send from Paul Hill? Good day to you, mate. Where are our small forwards last night? Can we shed some light on what they were up to? They don't seem to be at the fall of the ball. Now, this is a great, great point from you. And let's take a bit of a closer look. So let's have a look then. So what you found here, right, is genuinely when Carlton play well, I want you to look at these guys here. So genuinely what happens is that our second line, particularly our half-forward line, stay here. What we call a front of the ball. So if this ball comes down here, they're ready to enact pressure. Now, there was times that a lot of Essendon's goals were particularly, there was like 3 in the first half, that Carlton have actually got it out of the centre clearance and looked odds on to score. And they transitioned and it was quite easy. They resulted in shots at goal. There was a few behinds from it which really helped Carlton out. But they started to react, and particularly in the end of the third quarter, we saw Fisher went on the ball, and it kind of came off when Martin and Durden went to half forward instead of Fisher and Martin and Jesus in that rotation. And it was more Martin and Durden. And Durden started to really sit back here, particularly on the left-hand side. So when the ball came down, they just had a simple outnumber, and Carlton had reacted to that transition. It's a great spot, and it's something that Carlton have been guilty of over and over again. They have been really, really guilty of this quite often this season, and it's something that keeps happening. So it's going to be something that I'm interested to see what Voss says, because he did pick up on it and allude it again. There's some mistakes that keep being repeated. So I think that's a really interesting, it's a great question by you, Paul. But hopefully that answers your question. It's very reactive from them, and it's understandably, but it goes back to what Voss said, learning to win the right way and our way, and that's really important. So it's about being brave, and it's understandable why they do that. Durden is one of the players that is guilty of kind of getting lost looking for the ball. So hopefully that answers your question. Great question as always, Paul, though. Thank you very much for it, mate. The lovely Anne-Marie asks, Matt Owies, he had a cracker. I agree with you. So let's have a look at young Matty Owies. And there you are. There you see his heat map. As you can see, worked very hard up the ground, which we're going to cover a bit later on why that's important. But 2 goals, 7 score involvements. Look at the pressure acts and 2 tackles inside 50. He worked really hard all day, and definitely when he was at half forward in that rotation, he was probably Carlton's most deadliest at the times, particularly in the opening exchanges. They kind of changed him around as well, tried to impact, and you can see that a lot of these players will have time on the wing. There's a reason. Essendon focused nearly 95% down the wing. Carlton really handled that well, made them go to the corridor, and that is why Carlton had such a high score. Like we said, 58 points from turnover. And Owies is a big responsibility for that. He sacrificed a lot of his game to allow that funneling and that tunnelling into the corridor. And he was impeccable. And he is easily Carlton's best small forward. He cops a lot of abuse for me, but he's definitely Carlton's best small forward. So great spot, Anne-Marie. Thank you very much for your question. Chris Matthews, apart from the obvious, was happy with Newnes. Cottrell was interested, never stops, does some good things. Just spot on, Chris. Michael, good day to you, good mate of mine. How you doing, mate? Take the win gladly. We can look forward to next week. I hate to be negative, but Jack Newnes' sloppy disposal. He had plenty of the pill, but wasted 65% and turned it over far too much. Never thought I'd say this, but Cotters is past him and deserves his spot. What are your thoughts? Well, I think disposal efficiency, kind of blame myself sometimes because people look way too much at the stats, which is really good. But we've also got to look at other stats. So let's have a look at Newnes, right? Look at that heat map. Cottrell can't do that. Few players on the list can do that, right? Bit of time and back pocket, both wings, slotted on half forward, even slotted on the ball. 7 marks, 7 score involvements, 422 metres gained. 65% is bang average. It's buck average. So no issue with that. And genuinely players of Jack Newnes' ilk are going to go down when they get more of the ball anyway. However, them score involvements, I tell you now, he's number 2 in the comp for percentage of involvements in scoring chains. That is huge. Carlton had 58 points from scoring chains that were defensive half turnovers and transition. I'm telling you now for facts, Vossi will love Jack Newnes. And I think it's hard to find anyone in the club to replace him. I think Will Hayes is probably the natural replacement. Someone who has a very similar heat map to this will be the guy that will be looking at this role, right? Cottrell is definitely could do what he does in the final third of the ground, but I think Newnes' role is definitely understated for mine. And we know that I'm a big fan of him. And genuinely, I'm a big fan of players that I think are big role players. And for me, Newnes has got that. So I can see where you're going, Michael, but I think that that's good. Now, come to the movements, my friend. Great question, as usual, in the changes. That's been asked quite a lot. Blue Core, good day to you, mate. How you doing? Do you think the dominance of Doc, and lesser extent Saad, can be accredited in part to Newman? He's consistent, rarely beaten, and one-on-one, allowing other defenders to zone off. Now, I think that this is an absolute great call from you. Absolute great call. And I'm going to show you something in a minute, just to show you how it kind of works for Carlton, because it's a very, very understated little system. So let's have a look at this. So let's look what happens. It's quite an understated role. So I want to show you how Carlton's defence worked this weekend. So this here is PeterV. Now PeterV, as the ball is coming here, often makes a very direct run from deep. And what that allows is Harrison Jones to come in from the side. Caleb Marchbank stopped that impeccably, right? What happened here is Harrison Jones would come in from the side as well. Plowman alleviated that run, and Young did it. Now, Doc here genuinely, Doc or Saad genuinely stay around the fall of the ball. So as the ball came down here, right, what Doc looks to do then is genuinely he goes backwards, and Newman is very important because he often hides just here, and that is how the switches occurred. He also has the ability that when the ball is contested, he makes this very direct run here and picks up the loose ball and acts as the extra. So great spot by you, Blue Car. He has a very important role, and probably for me, one of the most understated roles at the football club. So fantastic. Thank you for your question, Blue Car. Brilliant question. Lecogram, let dog, had the highest kick to handball ratio for the year. Why? Change of tactics response to the opposition conditions. Great question. I'll cover that in 3 pieces. Madison side 50 were up tonight. Excellent when you consider the weather. Was it about our ball movement that allowed that? Okay, cool. So you've picked that up, which is fantastic, Timmy. Well done, mate. Both of you. Fantastic. I'm sure a lot of people did at home. So it was 1.7, their kick to handball ratio, which is quite high. You're going well over to the Teague years there. So probably part of conditions, yes, because it's wet. And Carlton have been really horrible in the wet, that they've moved it short. Carlton definitely look for territory. It's also a process of playing against a team that plays on the wing. When teams play on the wing, genuinely you have more space in behind because they stretch it. Carlton attack the corridor a lot quicker. So kicking was the most effective way. But they did play a lot more territory game, and there's a reason why. So let's go. So what we're going to do is it's real exaggerated, this is really exaggerated. So what we found this week, particularly with Harry and Charlie, they took it in turns, is Harry would, let's just say this is Harry. We played against the side that is the weakest in the comp at one-on-ones, and Carlton really exploited that well. The aim was to really get it in as quickly as possible, and usually the earlier possible. And what we saw here was Harry made this run, right? So whoever was playing full forward at the time, they did swap it, would make this run. But the goal was a great example when Charlie assisted, right? Now, Jack Martin kind of played the normal full forward run and ran here. And Charlie would run even further here. And then Jack Silvani would come into a more traditional role and lead out here. Now, because Carlton are technically intersecting this guy's zone, this guy's zone, this guy's zone, this is the issue with what Rutten plays. And Carlton suddenly started to find this happened, right? Charlie would look like he wasn't going to get it. Now, then what happens is Harry went back here and there was the work ahead of the ball. And you found this happen, that kind of loop here. So Charlie would go back to here, Harry did. And say Jack Martin would go here. And suddenly there was an outlet ball, easy mark. There was a lot of uncontested marks down there. So great spot by you two. But it was definitely for me, one to get the ball inside 50 from an angle. Carlton really did attack and opened up the angle, particularly from the wide parts. but also they had an extra touch just outside of 50 that opened that running leading lane. So it was definitely a response, I think, to what Essendon do, and knowing that aerially, one-on-one, they are the worst side in the comp. So kicking is going to be poignant, very poignant. But it's also they're very weak around 70 as well. It's not just that, it's around the ground. And Carlton really exploited that very well down the fat side of the ground, particularly through the corridor. And definitely the conditions, they were very greasy and very slippy. So great spot, you two. Hope I answered your question. Much love to both of you. Chris Gllenn, good day to you, mate. I feel now Marchie's back, Plough's game will improve. They play well with each other. They spot on do. And partly when we were talking about their defence, there's a reason that Ploughman is very good at stopping running lanes. But this was Marchbank's game, and you can see here, deployed really in the Whittaker role as the defensive stopgap on the wing. Got a lot of numbers there. Now, I want you to look at something very important. Carlton had very low one-on-one win percentages this week, and it was actually interesting. Zach Reed and their defence were the top two, but he was third, right, in a real tough marking day. And it's interesting that even though Essendon had the two leading one-on-one winners on ground for the team that's the worst, they were uncontested or poor deliveries. Marchbank, 50% win percentage one-on-one, which is huge. Huge for someone just returning. 4 marks, 2 intercept possessions, and again, backing up the trend that he's very useful on the ground and did the hard stuff well. Few spoils in there as well, but to beat Peter Wright, you have to be able to spoil, which is what Lewis Young did, but then you've also got to be able to peel off, and this is what he did. He led his man to traffic very well, and he was a very, very good game. But I agree with you, Ploughman and Marchbank are very understated about what they do, particularly Ploughman. We know he gets a lot of beef, but very, very understated. Jamie, what did you think of Heppel's birthday speech? I don't really want to talk about it, but this video sums it up. No. Hope that answers your question, Jamie, mate. Bit of banter there. Thank you very much for it, taking the time to reach out, bud. Maxie! How you doing, mate? How long until we see Harry kick a bag of 7? Well, Richmond hate playing, Harry. Next week, mate. Next week. In the last month, the Blues are number 1, asked Mickey D. For AFL points differential, great spot. It was on display tonight. It was indeed, my friend. We're adding layers to our game and turnover is king. How will this stack up against the Tigers? I think it stacks up very well. And I don't think there'll be a mass amount of changes next week, to be honest with you. I really don't. I think Cherry will miss the week, but we'll come onto that a bit later. But for me, it's huge because I knew we'd had the turnover game and I was never really worried. I think I was one of the few people that wasn't worried about it and was trying to downplay it. It was always going to come. And the fact that it's come without some key personnel at times is absolutely huge. And I think with Marchbank there, it's only going to get better. The way that Richmond play, they're not a negative side. It's going to be really poignant. And Carlton did, up until recently, have their best scores from that in round 1. I think it really does suit how we play and how they go against it. So I'm expecting it to continue. I actually think you'll see Carlton will start to be 50-50 from scores from turnover and their work around the centres. So I'm with you, mate. I think that's a great spot. Great spot, mate, Mickey. And as always, thank you very much for asking your question, buddy. Bryce Riches is in Cott's breakout game. The mark, run and handball. Most all year, how good does he look? He does look very good, and he's becoming a super sub, isn't he? Cottrell becoming an important player with a run. Let's have a look. So, he was our second hardest running player on the field this week. 14.8 kilometres ran. 4 scoring involvements, 75% in efficiency and disposals. Now, if you look at him here, he really handled that wing, and he was really, really good. A lot of spoils to ground, a lot of pressure around the aerial contest, and added a new layer, but honestly, his run and entry in there is really impressive, and he's someone that's really pushing hard for a bit of kudos. And the talk of Carl Lederman and stuff, if I was Voss, I'd be looking at Cottrell and thinking, you know what, he adds layers every week. He's very similar to how we're playing as a football club at the minute. So I think there's a great argument there. If you look at that heat map as well, all around the ground, that it's really starting to do it. And that's probably Newnes' strength. And it's something that Cottrell is really starting to build. Has he got enough time? I'm not too sure. But I think he really has got that endeavour. And I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing for him. And this is what we've been saying for years now. Carlton need to find their B graders, their squad role players, having a larger impact. And we're starting to see that this year. And it's great to see. So thank you very much for your question. It's great to give Cottrell some love. So this was huge. Paul Morgan, good day to you. Another brilliant performance. Just want to mention last night we went at 53% from D50. League average is 22, spot on. A lot of people, including myself, were concerned at the start of the year. We couldn't score from clearance. We couldn't score from clearances. The rate of diversifying methodology is impressive. It is indeed. My question, however, is why did we get beaten in the clearance game? Okay, cool. So this is a good question. TDK, I love your analysis. Up the baggers. I will give you it. Mitchell, what happened with our centre clearances? Smashed in the ruck, says Robert. Silvani, body being smashed. Try Murkoff to get hand on the footy. Needs something. Ben Tripp, heavy corridor use, found a different way to win. Do you think this is another layer of Voss's system? Or was it the lacklustre transition defence? I think it was more necessity to answer that question, Ben. I think that they had to do it. And I do think that they're poor. But Carlton have got to exploit areas that they're poor. But to answer your question, Robert, do I think Carlton need to play Murkoff? I don't. I think the last thing Carlton need to do this year is play Murkoff. I think it will be football suicide, quite honestly. I think it's a really bad idea. For me, I'm not a fan. And let's go here. Mitchell, what happened to our centre clearances? And Paul, you asked that question, so let's have a look-see, shall we? So this was really interesting, this part of the game. So in the first half, Carlton were really horrible at this, right? And Carlton really were victims of Draper and Phillips working TDK over and taking him out of the game. And it was interesting. What they did is they stayed behind the ball. And they were very, very clever with what they did. You found quite a lot were punched here forward. And their half-forward line worked really hard. And Carlton kind of got really caught in being almost too aggressive. And what Vossi did was really interesting. He moved, when Chera went down, Newnes played here. And you saw that and Cottrell started to play here. And these guys started to pinch behind the ball to take this away. And then what happened is Fisher came onto the ball and looked to be really, really a stopper in the terms of trying to be that little energy. And Hewitt and Cripps started to stifle the game and choke them. And they nearly evened it out in the end. And it was interesting. Carlton had to go really defensive because what they were doing is just simply clearing their lines. And Carlton were really unfortunate because they really condensed this area, right? They kind of did the same as us, but exaggerated. This is what it would look like after the ball was bounced. They worked really hard in blocking Carlton's handball movement. And that is what Carlton are really the lowest side, 1.1 kick to handball ratio in these centres. And we're number one in the comp. It's an effective method. They took that space away. It took Carlton a half to adapt, but they started to do it. So great spot, you two. Absolutely love it. Absolute wonderful spots. But that is effectively what they did. Carlton adjusted though late, and it did look pretty good in the end. So thank you very much for your question, all four of you. Here we are then. Do we have Sam Durden back? The back seven good enough against a stronger Tigers team? Chera possibly out next week. Who comes in? Do you think Durden comes in against the Tigers? I think Durden's and the young Marchbank intercepts. Do you think Durden will play next week? Based on what I saw this week, nah. Not all. I don't think Durden will come in. Depends on what he does in VFL. But if I was Voss, I'd be more than happy for that to go against there. I think it's the midfield is going to be the one, which is probably the question for him with Chera out. So I think watch Will Hayes, how he plays this week. Watch him. But I would imagine he will either bring Cottrell in straight for Chera, right? Or option two, if Hayes has a really good game, I think he may bring him in and keep Cottrell as the sub. Or maybe take Durden out this week and allow Cottrell to play a lot more at half forward. But I don't think there'll be a backline change. I really don't. I think Carlton will be very comfortable with that. Their makeup for height-wise is very similar to Essendon's. So I think Rewalt will be more than comfortable. Marchbank can be more than comfortable on Rewalt. And I think that if Lynch does get up and play, I think Lewis Young would be more than capable. And then Carlton have just got to worry about on the ball. So it depends what way he goes. But I wouldn't be. I don't think Dow's the man for the job. I think Dow would be the last person against Richmond that you want. I think he may go someone like a Cottrell, keep it the same, and give Fish that more time. Or he may even, like I say, drop Durden, drop Cerra because he's injured. I think Cerra will miss a week. And then bring Hayes and maybe Cottrell in. And Hayes can take that rotation through the ball. Very tough defensive player when he has in the VFL. But they're my changes. It'll be an interesting one, though, of what Vossi do. You'll learn a lot about what he does. If he brings Durden in, that says Carlton are expecting a very resurgent Richmond. I think it's a very defensive mechanism. I think Plowman, Marchbank and Young, I did like that combo. But great questions, Anthony, Grant and Pete, as always, mate. Much love. You support the channel and it melts my heart. Thank you very much, boys. Fuzzy! Dow's or Hayes for Cerra? Well, I think if you're giving me them options, I'd probably go Hayes, purely for his rotation. And love your coverage, says Chris White. Who do you think will come in for Cerra? Dow? Well, I mean, I've just explained it on my changes as well, Chris. But I think if I was looking at this, Cottrell does his best work in the final third. So there may be an argument to play him at half forward, which allows you to rotate Newnes more, and then bring Hayes in, which means then Newnes can be that emergency. I think with Dow, the problem is you're going to lose a rotation with Cerra, right? So you've got to remember, Cerra doesn't play all of his football on the ground. Now, 58%, I believe it was, Dow played on the ball. There's a reason that he only had 58% game time. Because the 4% they played him in the forward line, he was non-existent. He was non-existent, and that's the problem with Dow. So until Dow learns to do that, or Carlton change the system, and particularly Dow's habit of running away from that centre bounce would cause chaos with Richmond, because how Carlton beat Richmond in the first was the fact they were very compact. So it would require a big structural change, in my opinion. I'm not against it. I think Dow could do well, but I think a lot more has to go right than that. So for me, I'd be looking at how Hayes goes this week, and I think he would be a great rotation because Carlton then can cover that. I do think Cerra will miss. I hope I'm wrong. So hopefully that answers both of your questions. Much love to you both as well. Two massive commenters of the channel. Luis Larita. Good day to you, mate. Good friend of the channel. You're best on ground. Easy. Doc. For me, absolutely loved this bloke's game this week. 29 effective disposals, 7 intercept possessions, nearly 700 metres gained, 7 rebound 50s. Look at him. The general. Easily my favourite player this game. I thought he was splendid. Look at that heat map. Everywhere. Everywhere. They also threw him on the ball for stages, which I think may be done if Cerra's out. He took Cerra's rotation. Interesting. Out wide as well. Bit more from him. I really liked his game. My best on ground. And someone to look out for this week. EV, good day to you. Age and game breakdown between the twos would be much appreciated. You know what? You asked so nicely. Let's have a look at it. There it is. So Carlton's average age, 25 years, 2 months, 82.1 games played. That was made up with 7 players less than 50, 9 51 to 99, 6 100 to 149, and 1 150 plus. Essendon, 24 years and 10 months, 75.5 games, 9 under 50 games, 8 in that core range, 2 in 100 to 149, and 4 senior players. Bit more experience in the crux, but that's the age breakdown. Carlton going really well there because that's not a bigger gap as the game suggested. And we end Baggers 9 and 3. Why is Saad such a fucking good player? How does he do it? Let's look at Saad's game, right? And I want to talk really about that heat map because that heat map today showed why he is so good. But the 19 touches, 5 marks, 4 intercept possessions, 6 tackles. Saad plays a really, really pivotal role in Carlton's defence and their ability to suddenly score from transition. And look at that heat map. He oscillates predominantly where Young, Whittaker, Marchbank spoil. And this guy is a beneficiary of a lot of them spoils and a lot of them transitions. This guy is almost like a crummer in the back half, but also his ability to spoil and cut off that dangerous pass when teams go from the wing to the corridor isn't understated. He really influences that. He is an absolute phenomenal player, and he's also got the role that he's one of the guys that really is the metronome of Carlton's heavy ownership on its tempo and its ball control. So Baggers, great question. Hopefully that answers your question. And that is all we've got time for. Again, thank you so much for your love and support. I know you really look forward to the review. I do as well. It's great chatting to you guys and girls. Can I just say, again, to reiterate, your support and your love has been phenomenal through all my work on Blue Abroad and all my work here. I can't thank you guys and girls enough. You're all legends in my book, and I absolutely fucking love the chat with you guys and girls. It's my favourite time. Monday we'll do the VFL wrap. We'll have an extra special video as well next week. We've got our first live on Wednesday. Can't wait to do that. Till next time though, stay safe. Pom out.